Good morning, Clackamas County and everybody in attendance. I'm going to call into order our issues meeting.
Thank you. Vice Chair West. So Chair Smith and Commissioner Schrader are out of the office today. Vice Chair West will chair the meeting, and welcome back, Vice Chair West. Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Shull are present. There is a quorum. So this is the Administrator Issues and Updates list for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. Vice Chair West, would you please convene as the Housing Authority Board of Directors?
Thank you, Gary. I will now convene as, I will now recess as the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners and convene as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County.
We're now meeting as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County Board of Directors. Joining you online is Housing Resident Commissioner Ann Leenstra. We'll wait just a moment, please, for her to come in the screen here. She's on her way. She's in the room. She's coming over. Okay, but she's in the room? Oh, there she comes. Commissioner Leenstra.
Oh, there.
Good morning, Commissioner Leenstra.
Hi.
Welcome. These are requests for consent agenda. Item 1, adoption of a resolution 1982 for the approval of the Housing Authority fiscal year 2024-2025 annual plan and moving to work supplement required for grant funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Grant value is approximately $30 million. No county general funds are involved. Joining us to present, Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, and Tony Carter, Executive Director of the Housing Authority. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Housing Authority of Clackamas County held public hearing on February 24th to gather feedback on its 2024 annual plan and the Moving to Work supplement. The plan includes policy language changes approved by HUD, changes for implementing the Housing Authority through Modernization Act, and the new policies to align the Moving to Work program. This plan has been reviewed by staff and legal and is ready, or county council, and is ready for board approval by April 17 before HUD required submission. We request that the Board of County Commissioners officially adopt the resolution necessary for HAC to secure federal funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Commissioner Shull.
Yes, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
This request for grant, $30 million, this is not going to be the total monies that the county will receive this year from HUD, is it? We have more options to
So this isn't a
apply for
grant-
more money?
Right, so this isn't a grant application, it's a
This is your
annual
plan.
reporting.
This
Yeah.
is your plan. Okay. But it opens the door to funding.
There's more money, yes.
Yeah, okay. More than 30 million potentially?
Potentially, yes.
Okay, well, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion.
No motions. This will just
Oh,
go to Thursday's business meeting agenda. This is just if you have any questions
Oh.
for staff.
does anybody have any more questions? Yeah, it looks good moving forward.
Very good. Item 2, approval of a resolution 1981 authorizing designated officer authority to finalize and execute development agreements for Hillside Park Buildings A, B, and C. Project estimated cost of $147,700,000. Funding is from local, state, and federal sources. No county general funds are involved.
Just as a reminder, this item was presented in full at the recent policy session on March 20, 2024, where the board unanimously approved the resolution to move forward to the consent agenda for adoption. Hillside Park is a 13.7-acre public housing project in Milwaukee. It is set to be redeveloped into 500 new affordable housing units in 2 phases. This resolution is regarding Phase 1, with construction scheduled to start June 2024, developing 275 new units of affordable housing in 3 buildings. Authorize officers to finalize and execute the needed agreements for Phase 1 of the redevelopment of Hillside Park through this resolution include the following positions: Executive Director of the Housing Authority, Acting or Interim Executive Director of the Housing Authority, or Director of Development of the Housing Authority. We will request further board approval, and documents nearing completion will be submitted to the board for review before the closing. So basically, if we get to contract, we'll be coming back before you with those, but this gives signature authority to those three persons mentioned.
Any comments, questions, or concerns?
Good.
Seeing none.
Very good. Thank you very much. That's the end of the Housing Authority list. Thank you, Commissioner Leenstra, for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair, would you please convene as the Water Environment Services Board of Directors?
I will now adjourn as the Housing Authority and convene as the Water Environment Services Board.
You're now meeting as the Water Environment Services Board of Directors. This is a request for the board to sign a letter of support for U.S. Senate Bill 1430, Water Systems PFAS Liability Protection Act. There's a memo in your packet and a draft letter for your review. Tonya Holowetzky is the Director of Public and Government Affairs for the county, and Greg Geist is the Director of Water Environment Services. So go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. As Gary said, we're here to ask for your support for the letter in your packet. But before we go to the letter, I'm going to ask Greg Geist to give some more context and information about why we're here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. PFAS, is a family of chemicals. It's been in use since the 1940s. It's in everything from cosmetics to furniture to clothing. Firefighting foam is a big source. And it's similar to PCBs back in the 70s. It's they call it the forever chemical. It doesn't break down in the environment. We don't produce it. We receive it passively from industries that discharge and homes that discharge to our system. The Superfund or CERCLA legislation requires folks to participate in the cleanup of chemicals like PCBs or ultimately PFAS that we find in the environment. So what we're trying to do here is support this legislation that would give relief to folks like us that don't produce it. And all we do is try to treat it, so that we're not held liable down the road. A good example, I think an analogy, is the city of Portland and the Superfund cleanup that's happening on the Willamette. The city of Portland, because they had pipes that went from industry to the river, are on the hook for that, for millions and millions and millions of dollars, even though they had nothing, they didn't produce it, they didn't know it was in their system, but they're on the hook. So this bill would give us relief from that.
Okay.
So if no questions for Greg, we are asking for your support in this letter. We will be sending it to our congressional delegates and ready to answer any more questions you may have.
Well, actually, I do have a question for Greg.
Sure.
And that is that, knowing this is everywhere, what's the end game? Do we understand what the end game is? Aside from fining, if there's not a solution, I mean, is there a solution? I mean, what does one do, whether you're a government or whether you're an industry, or whether you're a consumer or a household? What do you do to help the cause, or what would you do otherwise that hurts the cause?
I would say, well, it's in you, it's in me, it's everywhere.
Right, it's everywhere.
And similar to PCBs, it needs to be addressed at the level of production. An alternative needs to be found. There are products out there that are PFAS free, and so I would say as a consumer, as a person, as a constituent, if you can try to find products that don't have this family of chemicals in it, and they are available, then that's all we can do at this point.
So I guess what I'm after here, just knowing living in the environmental world, that if you are part of regulating or doing something that you can control, right? You can have an impact. For example, look at auto emissions. Government isn't responsible for auto emissions, really. It's the manufacturers. So over the years, they've made the manufacturers build cars that produce less emissions, right? So it's been industry specific and targeted to the industry. So my question is, knowing what we know, why would we even need a letter? Why are we not even forgiven on the front end of this? Why is this even necessary? Is it that out of control? Why is it being spread to non-producers of PFAS?
It's just the nature of every time, if you have a Gore-Tex jacket and you wash it in your washer, it finds its way to our treatment facility.
Right, I understand that, but again, as a water treatment agency, we're not producing it.
No, but that's not how CERCLA works, and that's why we're asking for this special bill that would carve out that liability from passive receivers of the chemical.
Right, and
Again,
how-
right now, that's just not how CERCLA works. The Superfund legislation from early 70s doesn't have a provision, and that's what we're asking for.
And, because there's no means to clean it or filter it, right? No matter how, whether it's,
It's not impossible.
Filtration.
It's massively expensive.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Geist. Of course, we're all familiar with PCBs. 30, 40 years ago was a big issue. But PFAS is something that's new to me, and I'm glad you bring this up. I support the document you have here, but this is a good opportunity to mention to our public affairs folks that this would be a good program to educate the people of Clackamas County on the PFAS and how they can avoid it, and products they can buy that are PFAS-free. Please take a look at that when you have time. Thank you.
And I will say, we have monitored for it. We've sampled our biosolids, our influent, our effluent, and we're working in Oregon with the Oregon Association of Clean Water Agencies. We tried to get legislation this year to support a study. We want good science, and this is early days for PFAS. We don't know as much about it as, for instance, PCBs. And we just want the science to drive the policy. That's what we're, as an organization, that's what we're trying to make sure that we do.
Okay, good. Thank you.
The part I'm struggling here with, and, because something, I understand the analogy you're using with PCBs to a point, right? Because you can stop producing transformers or whatnot that actually had PCBs in them and so on. I just think about, as ubiquitous as it is worldwide, and knowing that with our import-export policies and tons, thousands, tens of thousands of shipping containers coming in, probably they are laced with PFAS which are products we eat, drink, wear, everything we use. How can we be, again, just from a federal standpoint, it just seems that it's obvious and ridiculous enough that the letter shouldn't even be necessary, that the fact that it's gone this far. But I support the letter, don't get me wrong. Obviously, that's a step in the right direction, but there needs to be some, I won't say sideboards, but there needs to be some plan, comprehensive plan that's realistic, that's going to address this. But if we're simply going to, again, punish ourselves as a country while it's all over, it's in the air, it's everywhere, you know that. You already know that. I don't see how we can make a measurable difference unless there is some sophisticated plan that is a pragmatic plan that can address this. Just seems to be a lot of regulation. I don't disagree. I understand the harm, to a certain degree of what that might be. It's somewhat still undefined what that harm really is. But it's not something you can measure at home, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I support wanting to reduce the liability to the county. As we passively are subjected to things outside of our control. We want to make sure our resources don't go towards lawsuits that don't promote really the public health and safety of the community, but clean water and good working sewer systems do. And so that's what we should be focusing our resources to. So I support this. I am curious, I haven't specifically read this Senate bill, but I'm wondering who's sponsoring it and what his origins are in the Senate.
Sure. Sponsors Cynthia Loomis, our Wyoming, and then there's co-sponsors Boozman, Kramer, Graham, Mullen, Ricketts, Sullivan, and Wicker.
Okay. Do we have any idea how our two senators are feeling about this? Do we know if it's even really on the radar right now? Is it, like, what's the potential pathway of this bill? Do you have any knowledge of that?
I would say that PFAS is on everybody's radar. This particular carve-out, I don't know that it is. That's why we're sending the letter. And what we're hearing is that it may not have a great chance of passing, given its sponsors and the roots of it. But I feel it's important, and so I want to do it.
Its sponsors don't currently control the Senate, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions or comments?
My last comment on this, I understand that we want to be relieve the liability, but again, I think from the federal standpoint, they're not really giving anyone a path towards a practical means of addressing it, right? So it's more focused on release of a liability, but it's not solution oriented. That's my issue.
I agree, Commissioner. Gary?
If you choose to support this, we need a motion of support, please.
So moved.
Seconded.
Gary, can you call the vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, clerk will call the vote. Go ahead, Tony.
Commissioner Schall.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Vice Chair West.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries 3-0.
Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Vice Chair, would you please convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Board of Directors?
I will now adjourn as the West Environmental Services Board and convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation Districts Board.
You're now meeting as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Board of Directors. This is an advisory board appointment. Tony, go ahead, please.
The North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Budget Committee, staffed by the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, currently has 3 openings on the commission due to term expirations. 5 community members are allowed with 3-year terms through a recruitment process. 6 applications were received, 3 are recommended for appointment, 2 are new, 1 it would be a reappointment. Recommendations are Luca Dorito to a 2nd term, David Sazan to a 1st term, and Sean Buchanan to a 1st term.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Budget Committee nominations of Luca Dorito, David Chitzazan, and Sean Buchanan.
Commissioner Savas.
Gentlemen, Commissioner West, you were not here for the last NCPRD Board of Directors meeting, but I think that was raised, was it not, Gary, about the question about the Budget Committee from one of the current DAC members as far as the application. I thought it may have been mentioned there, may have been mentioned before or after the meeting. Perhaps I picked up on it. But my question more is on the process element of this. We have the 2 members that are not being reappointed are not being reappointed not because they resigned, but I'm just kind of curious about, number 1, the politics of not reappointing someone who's willing, and number 2, not having that institutional knowledge. It seems like the budget committees, especially on the special districts, are quite detached from the body itself in any form. Obviously, we serve as the 5 budget committee members from the board of directors of NCPRD, but on the citizen side, my concern is that there's not a lot of engagement between the budget committee members of NCPRD and the activities of NCPRD in any way, shape, or form. And so this further, to me, without any institutional existence there, except for 1 being reappointed, hasn't been on the budget committee that long, by the way. We're losing that. Do we value that typically? And I'm just concerned about this. I'm not, even frankly, I'll just be very candid, I'm not necessarily sure without a better explanation that I can even approve this today. I didn't anticipate that we would not have a quorum. And if it comes back next week, I'm sure we can do that. But I want to have a better understanding of what the rationale is for not reappointing two of the people and not looking at that institutional aspect of that. So, Gary, I know you've been in a previous role as a director of PGA, part of this. Do you have any insight, or is this simply a budget, financial, staffing kind of a process where they're being screened and interviewed, or is this actually a district-wide effort?
Really quick before you chime in, Gary, Tony, do you have your second?
I do not have a second on the motion.
I'll be the second.
All right, so
So
first,
still back to, yeah, go ahead,
thank you.
back to
So
discussion.
Tony can answer the questions about the candidates, and then I'll answer the larger questions. So go ahead, Tony.
Absolutely. The 3 openings on the board that currently exist are due to term expirations. All of the members, I would have to look and see whether or not those members that expired, whether they applied for the roles. I do offer that the other members of the board that are not up for appointment are Eric Shawn, who is in a 4th term, and Mary Gast, who is in a 5th term.
Dominic, can you answer the question about the candidates? All right, so I'm going to Dominic Cortinas, he's Deputy Director of NCPRD. So the first question is, the candidates whose term expired, are they allowed to reapply, and do they reapply or not?
So first question, yes, they're allowed to reapply. I was on the interview committee myself with our financial lead as well, Cindy Becker. So everyone was allowed to reapply of the expiring terms. Only one chose to. That person has been recommended to be reappointed. We conducted a total of 6 interviews. We scored them individually, totaled our scores, and came up with the 3 best candidates that fit the criteria of the budget committee that we believe would represent NCPRD's interest.
Can you give me a thumbnail sketch of what that criteria is?
So we looked at experience looking at budgets. We had a couple candidates that were more interested, and I'm not trying to put words in their mouth, just learning general NCPRD information without special focus on being able to understand and read budgets. I think there were a couple people, and not to name any, but we had a couple DAC members that were just looking to kind of understand a little bit more, and we communicated to them. That's something that we can bring them up to on more of a one-on-one meeting to kind of let them delve in and answer questions specific to budget, to almost educate them. But the 3 that we recommended before you today, this isn't their first time looking at budgets. All of them have a financial background in one way or another that we felt very comfortable with, and that we thought could either make a recommendation and support us before it becomes before you guys here in a couple months.
If I may answer your larger question, this has been a critique on almost all the special district budget committees in my experience, except for Wes. In my opinion, Wes, Greg left, Wes does it well, but the library district, the lighting district, the critique from those members of the public that I've heard is, you appoint us to this committee, we spend 30 minutes with the board in May, and then you never hear from us again. And there probably should be more engagement with the budget committees than we do. Granted, that's something I'd like to work with you commissioners on for all the county's budget committees. So that is a standing critique the members of the public share. So I want to work with you to rectify that, but I hope the immediate question you asked Commissioner Savas, the carryover candidates, only one chose to apply, and they are being recommended.
Okay, well, that's helpful. And thanks, Gary, for your comments. And I just want to just expand on that a moment, just to give an idea of maybe what efforts could be done to engage the budget committee. I don't recall in my 12, 13 years of being a liaison in any time in which the board of directors of NCPRD or any other district or that of the DAC invited and engaged any of the budget committee members, and yet the budget has been. I appreciate all the work that staff have brought, and most of the staff that are on this are new. I appreciate the fact that they've gained more insight and clarity on the budget and exposing things that need to be rectified. I really appreciate that. So I'm not critical of anyone here in this room or anyone involved, but there's been this longstanding practice, it seems, or maybe it's not a practice, maybe it is just, more, maybe the intent is not to have it separate, but hasn't been that engagement that brings those people here informed. And I just got the sight that after the last NCPRD budget meeting in May of last year, how many of the budget committee members came up to me and said, I had no idea about that. I won't say what that is. I won't get into that long-winded conversation, but I think we can do a better job, and I'm going to abstain today. So I want to better understand how, if there's going to be how we rectify this in a more constructive way. I'm looking for a constructive solution where they're informed. They're not just here for an exercise of rubber stamping the budget. Absent that, I just see this as an opportunity, again, not to be critical of anyone, but I see this as an opportunity to draw attention to process and how, from a financial standpoint, how we help, in this case, the district, become more financially sound than it currently is today. I think that with a robust budget committee, we would not be underwater for all of these years, year after year after year in the budget. And I think this is an excellent example of, I think, a shortcoming, really, in processing from a financial standpoint. I'm using my financial rationale here, so I will abstain today from the vote.
I have a couple questions.
Or I'll ask my colleagues I ask my colleagues perhaps to defer this to next week.
I'll consider it. I have a couple questions, but I'm going to allow Commissioner Scholl, please chime in here.
Yes, now it's been explained to us who the 6 applicants were, that we have a recommendation here for 3, the 1 second term, and 2 applicants who were considered to be the most experienced with budgets. So if we don't consider this today, what's going to happen between now and next week? Are we going to go back to a recruitment process to look at new applicants, which I don't think is going to really be very productive, because you've gone out to a press release, Facebook, your website, county website, in your search for applicants for these positions. So although we can always make changes to how a budget committee might interact with the Board of Commissioners, we certainly can look at that, and that's important. But today, the motion is to approve these 3 recommendations from the NCPRD staff, correct?
Correct.
And so therefore, I recommend we go ahead with this motion, and I urge all my colleagues to support it.
We've reviewed these applicants and looked over them. I guess my questions would be a little bit to my colleague, Commissioner Savas. Do you believe that, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, it's my understanding that we had a number of people who did not re-up to be on this committee any longer?
Correct.
And they had some experience and were long-standing, but for reasons unknown to me, they have decided to do other things with their lives and passions and efforts. We had 1 member say, hey, I still want to raise my hand and serve my community in this capacity. And then you guys had a number of applicants that you reviewed that applied, and then based on qualifications and a open scoring system that was based on fairness and merit, you guys chose who you thought would be best to present before us. Am I understanding that correctly?
100% correct.
Okay. Commissioner Savas, help me understand your concern with the process. You have a lot of experience with this. I absolutely respect your insight on this. You're speaking to process or concerned about losing experience. And is there a certain person that is before us that you should not be appointed or presented? Do you want a different process? Please help me understand your concern. I don't want to ignore it.
Yeah, well, I have no issue with any of the people that are that applied that are here before us for approval, or perhaps any of the people that applied that are not on the list for today. So it's not a person issue. It's I'll say it again. It's a process issue. I'm going to give you just a short example as best I can. In 1998, I sat on my first public committee. It was a budget committee for the water district. I saw, from a financial standpoint, problems. And after a couple years, I was then appointed to a vacancy on the board in which I ran for election in 2021 and was elected to the Oak Lodge Water Board. And when I got in that role, I took that experience and discovered and shown that they were in financial trouble, right? So I think that by not necessarily my pursuit, but not about myself, but we have, and you were not at the last, Commissioner West, you're not at the last NCPRD Board of Directors meeting, but we had a financial forecast that showed, and also that was actually spelled out in the last budget, that there is a financial situation with NCPRD in which they have been running in the red for a long period of time. And the has not been risen to the awareness of the Board of Directors, risen to the awareness of the Budget Committee, and risen to the awareness of the DAB, which is now the DAC. So I think from a process standpoint, if we don't like, which I do not like, I don't think anyone does, the fact that the NCPRD is not on a structurally sound financial footing. They're going underwater, and the forecast is they'll be if we do nothing, we're on a path to being $2 to $3 million underwater in just a couple, 3 years. That's a reality. So doing the same thing over and over, I'm not saying it's insanity, but it's not going to rectify the problem unless we think about this more holistically. I'm just using this opportunity, not about the people, but more about the process, that they need to be more engaged. If that results in a policy in which they are great, but without raising this issue, we're not going to change anything, and I don't want to continue down the same path of doing the same thing over and over again, recognizing the financial difficulty that the district is in. I have seen no solution to fix this as of today. I hopefully, with the change of management, there are a lot of new people here. We've had a lot of people that have moved on, and a lot of new people I have a lot of faith in. But I think we need to set ourselves up for success, not set ourselves up for the same framework in which we've gotten to this point. So without some opportunity for staff to redress this perhaps, maybe within a week's time, I can't support it today. I'm going to use this opportunity as leverage for change. I'm going to be very honest what I'm trying to do here today. And there's no harm, Commissioner Schull, there's no harm in waiting a week. I'm not asking that staff do any changes to the people, because this is not about the people, it's about the process.
Commissioners, I also want to interject. I'm not quite sure what significant measures or process changes can happen in a week. We have before us 3 qualified members from the community that applied for this position. I am absolutely share your concern, and there's not a lot of daylight between us on the issues that you have raised. But we still have this board for this budget committee that we need to work with to maybe make those changes you're talking about. I'm trying to get there to find the reason for us to kick the can down another week. I'm not confident that the result today would even change if I push that forward, and we did that. We have 2 other members missing that I would assume, and it's an assumption of mine, that they would probably want us to confirm these members. But I do think your point is well taken, that we need to address those issues with the budget and with all those things. So I understand your position. I don't know if not voting on this today in the big scheme of all of that changes anything. Commissioner Schull.
Yes, Dominic Cortines, you signed the document before us for the division approval on these nominations. Should we not have the motion approved today, how soon do you expect the Budget Committee to convene in the near future? Would not approving my motion today affect your ability to sit down with the new budget committee?
So prior to this meeting today, we let everybody know this was going to come before the board today, so that we were recommending their approval. So until there's an actual approval by the board, we cannot move forward
Sure.
because we're not sure who the board approves.
Yeah.
Once that's done, we have plans to engage with the approved members almost in an onboarding fashion to talk about the budget, so they don't have, like Commissioner's office says, 30-minute review and then give us your stamp and we'll see you next year. So we do have plan in place to make it more transparent, more inclusive of the members that we recommended, because we realize a handful of us weren't here in the past. There's a lot of new leadership, and we just want to always evaluate the process and see if we can continually improve it. So that's kind of our plan, but that plan doesn't really start to execute until there's official approval where we can officially work with the appointed
Yeah,
new
understood,
members.
understood. Well, it's clear to me that your three recommendations here are your three best draft choices available, period, end of sentence. I recommend my motion be carried today.
Gary, if we do punt till next week, or is that even possible? What does the schedule look like?
You can wait an additional week. So I want to remind commissioners, budget committees by state law, they meet after a proposed budget is submitted. Then they review that, and they convene with you as the county commissioners, and then they make a recommendation. So they're not a year-long committee. They meet when the proposed budget is submitted. Certainly, we can educate and inform, which Dominic already mentioned. So, long answer short, you can wait a week. Vice Chair, I'm not hearing a majority to approve this, so I suggest we punt it to next week.
I'm going to call the vote.
Director Savas.
Abstain.
Director Shull.
Aye.
Vice Chair West.
Aye.
And my closing comment on this is that part of my rationale is that I can raise this same issue to my two colleagues who are absent today so that they're also aware, and I would suspect, frankly, that they would not agree with deferring it, but agree that there needs to be a change in process. I felt that the conversations I've had with people after the budget meeting last time in NCPRD and since then is that I hear the theme, why weren't we told this before? So I appreciate what staff just shared, that they want to onboard them and orient them, but I don't think that that was done last year. Or maybe it wasn't done completely. I don't know. I'm not here to cast anything, but we need a change in process that ensures these people are informed and that there is some level of engagement with either the board, or with the District Advisory Committee. So we need to fix the budget, and I suspect that what's going to be proposed to us here in May, not April, but in May, the budget, when that's proposed, I hope it has a structurally sound, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to make all those changes that quickly.
I agree with everything you said. I think we have to roll up our sleeves and do those exact same things you talked about. It is concerning that we didn't know about it. And I think that the board would be pretty unified in that effort. So I think the fact that you just even brought it up today is consequential, and we'll move forward with that. But I think we can do both and confirm these volunteers while also absolutely tackling that issue. Gary, what is next?
Great, we'll bring it back next week. Thank you. Vice Chair, would you please reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I will now adjourn as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Board and reconvene as the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners.
We'll meet as the Board of Commissioners for the remainder of the meeting. Next, request for consent agenda for the Board of County Commissioners. First, Finance Department, item 1, approval of a supplemental under 10% budget resolution for fiscal year 2023-2024. Net increase in appropriations of $9,865,861. Funding is through beginning fund balance, increases, other revenue sources, federal grants, charges for services, and other intra-fund transfers. No county general funds are involved. Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Vice Chair West and Commissioners. I'm Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director with the county. And yes, this morning we're bringing to you a supplemental budget, which is less than 10%, so it can follow through a consent approval process, if you consider that. The effect is an increase in appropriations, which is spending in our budget for fiscal year 23-24 of $9,865,861. And I'm going to go through briefly what these are. You'll have the 8 items in your packet, but the first one is recognizing interest earnings and then increasing the budget authority in non-departmental department for operating expenses. And then number 2, we're increasing the finance department's budget authority by $75,000. This is the second half or second portion of the short-term rental program support that is coming in from tourism. And so that's also reflected in number 7 in the packet. Number 3 and 4 are changing and increasing the budget authority for high-intensity drug trafficking area funding, and that's in the sheriff's operating levy, and that is $332,000. Number 5 increases our special grants fund for ARPA dollars. What we do is we recognize the dollars when they've been spent, and we then bring those dollars over for your budget authority approval in operating expenses. And that is approximately, $4.5 million total there. And number 6 is increasing health, housing, and human services grant funding by $3 million. So this is increasing the revenue and related operating expenses and special payments, and then some of that will go into contingency. And finally, we're recognizing additional beginning balance for this fiscal year, 23-24, for our TS Technology Services Fund, and authorizing them $1.1 million additional in operating expenses on completing the projects that they have carried over year to year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Comfort. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, Gary.
All right, thank you. Next, Technology Services. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Sandy for hosting of the Clackamas Broadband Exchange server for the American Rescue Plan Act broadband expansion. Total value is $5,400 for 2 years. Funding is through the Clackamas Broadband Exchange ARPA Broadband Expansion Fund. No county general funds are involved. Keelan Clearly is the Deputy Director of Technology Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Vice Chair West and Commissioners. As Gary said, my name is Keelan Cleary. I'm Deputy Director for Technology Services. We have an intergovernmental agreement before you to approve a partnership with City of Sandy to help us, to host a server of ours to help us manage some broadband expansion in their area. We will provide the server. They're going to provide the air conditioning, power, and some management help with that. This partnership is the most effective use of our funds to host that rather than trying to provide our own space and clean power, air conditioning, et cetera.
Commissioner Scholl.
This $5,400, is that going to help you push out broadband? When you say expansion, you're talking about extending it out in the Sandy area?
Yes, this is actually helping us manage some existing expansion project that's already in place. So I believe the area is between Eagle Creek and Sandy. I want to say it's Colorado Road and Gunderson Road.
Mm-hmm.
So that project is already in the works. This is to host a server that will help us manage that fiber.
Yes, and that area is being pushed out with monies that were made available for broadband expansion from ARPA dollars?
Correct.
Oh, good, okay, good. Thank you.
No problem.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to give my reflection over the last 12, 13 years with the relationship between the City of Sandy and the Clackamas County as it was when this was formed. And that was, the City of Sandy was a leader in really the broadband to their customers. They had a very unique program and effort to provide broadband service to every household in Sandy. So they've been on the leading edge of this and expansion. And they were also at the same time, coincidentally, the management and the board of the city council when it came to a library solution. So I just want to point out that we value that relationship, we value everything that they do, and we do these things for the benefit of the community at large, and whether it's libraries, broadband, and all the other things. So I'm happy to be a partner with this. I support this effort, and I hope we can continue having that great relationship beyond those 2 items, but all of them as well. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for coming today.
Next, Transportation and Development, item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Oak Lodge Water Services relating to the Boardman Avenue Arista Flood Attenuation Options Study. Agreement value is $100,000 for 21 months. Funding is through Oak Lodge Water Services and county road funds. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair West, Commissioners. Water knows no boundaries. So essentially, we are here to talk about a reoccurring problem we're having with high water levels at the intersection of Boardman Avenue and Arista, essentially from Boardman Creek. And we are looking to go into a partnership with Oak Lodge. I can't remember their title anymore. Water Services? Yes. Basically to hire a consultant, because if you think about the relationship of the county and the Oak Lodge Water Services, we are responsible for, and we maintain the systems in the roadways. They are responsible for surface water and sanitary and drinking water outside of those rights of way, okay? And so essentially when you look at a drainage problem along a certain culvert or drainage way, it crosses from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So the discussion has been, how do we jointly approach in a cooperative effort to deal with this particular high water issue? So essentially you have a proposal in front of you to essentially partner with them to fund this particular project and design assessment for this high water issue. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions, concerns, comments? Commissioner Scholl.
Mr. Johnson, that shared 50/50 up to a maximum contract of $100,000. So your liability to the county road fund is only $50,000.
Correct.
Okay.
One thing I will just want to point out here, and maybe this study will do that, but I have a lot of history with this area and this district, and that's where I reside, so I'll be perfectly candid about that. I appreciate the partnership with this. I'm hoping there has been over the years, colleagues, I won't say finger pointing, but some of that over the years, whose responsibility it is for water flooding or puddling or whatever it may be. And I think we've tried and done some good work and getting a better understanding of those responsibilities. But at the end of the day, when it comes to surface water, what's often used as a metric or a gauge to evaluate responsibility to those who pay their monthly fee for surface water, it's really about the, what's the term? Impervious surfaces, right? The impervious surface exposure. So roads, there's impervious, so there's obviously water runoff, and if you have a rooftop, but there's not a calculation or a metric that actually says your property has X amount of impervious surface, so therefore your rate is going to be adjusted based on that square footage. But in more relationship between our responsibility as the roads that go through there versus the properties that are there, I don't know what that number is, but I hope that we can work in partnership to solve some of the flooding problems. This is historically, it's just the lay of the land, that this area is pretty well flat. It doesn't drain very well, and in storm events, there's a lot of local flooding. So I appreciate the effort, and I hope, again, we can work together cooperatively with both the county and Oak Lodge Water Services. So kudos to everyone for taking this step.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Any comments? Seeing none? Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Item 2, approval of a guaranteed maximum price contract with P&C Construction for construction renovations of Concord Community Center. Amendment value is $6,160,262. Funding through $609,716 of North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District System Development Charge Funds and $5,550,546 of budgeted North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District general funds. No county general funds are involved. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So essentially what you see before you today is the the guaranteed max price contract for the work that's going to be done in the community center at Concord. You've seen a number, this is odd, let's just be frank, because you've seen a number of general GMP contracts that have come through. but it was important to establish GMPs for each individual entity on that particular property. There's a lot of players associated with that site. This is specific to the community center. Essentially, it includes installation of the new HVAC system, demolition of the old heating system. It includes new ADA accessible entrances and lobby with a new elevator. It includes the cost of the existing roof repair and upgrade for future seismic improvements. So essentially, we believe this is the last GMP that you will see, because this is the last element associated with the project to be contracted and set for price. There may be small change orders that come through, but this should close all the GMP requests for these particular projects. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
I don't have any questions, just a statement, and I felt a little bit unfortunate. I missed an opportunity at the last Board of Directors meeting not to point out that a good portion of the Concord building, which this is all about, is going to be the future home of NCPRD staff administration offices. It's not simply for community services only. And I just want to let the chair had some concerns about the expenditure and so forth. And I don't know what that ratio of square footage assigned to is. That's not the point here today, but I just want to point out that this is not just a community center, that the former director chose to leave the facilities here at the DSB building and move his staff to the Concord building, and now it's under construction. Now they're working remotely, I guess, or at other places, but it's also a big part of this. So this is not simply for park purposes, other than for administration as well. So it's both. I just want to point that out.
When will we see this get underway, you believe?
Work has already started out at the site, because we have work essentially for the library that's underway, and additional work will be queuing up for the park. Since it's all one contractor, my assumption is there will be a start work order issued again for work on the site probably in the next week or so, probably by Monday.
Okay, thank you.
And we understand the permit was issued yesterday?
Yes, permit was issued this morning. I want to be clear, there was never a stop work order on this particular project. There was an article that came out. There's just misnomers of terms. It was a reasoned decision to reduce possible cost escalation through the project. If you've built stuff, this stuff happens. We would never go out and do anything that didn't require a permit, and we worked closely hand in hand with Oak Lodge Water Services to get that permit issued, and it's been issued as of this morning. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Dan, this is the last chunk of work.
Well, this is the last, if you think about the various elements of the project, so you had the park, you have the library, you have Concord Community Center. Yep. This is the last contract component to set the GMP. There might be some small amendments that come, in construction. There's amendments that come forward. You guys have dealt with those in the past, but right now this should be the last GMP that we're working off of.
There's a lot going on there.
A lot going on there. Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Health, Housing, Human Services. Item 1, approval of an amendment to a revenue intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon for the operation of Community Development Disability Program Services. Amendment value is $293,450.50. Agreement value, total agreement value increased to $29,688,449.50 for 2 years. Funding is through federal Medicaid funds and State of Oregon general funds. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning again.
This amendment is a one-time ARPA funding from the State of Oregon to increase, enhance, and expand services for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. It is intended to develop case managed capacity as a response to the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Any questions or comments, concerns? Seeing none.
Item 2, approval of an amendment updating language and adjusting match requirements of a revenue intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for capital funding for the Mount Hood Express services. Agreement value remains at $366,592 for 4 years. Funding is through the Federal Transit Administration, statewide transportation improvement funds, and private match. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this agreement funds preventative maintenance and operations for the Mount Hood Express buses, which provide public transit between Sandy, Government Camp, and Timberline, enhancing access to medical and social services for elderly and disabled residents. The Mount Hood Express service will deliver approximately 70,000 rides with this funding. The match requirement is about a little bit over $37,000, and it's coming from non-general fund sources.
Any questions or concerns? I have a question. What is our usage like? Do we fill that to capacity? Is there a large usage amount? Are we getting the word out there that we have this service available? I think it's important when we can to make sure these services are utilized.
Yeah, as far as the last report I've gotten, that it's high usage and we're using it to capacity, but I can get you exact numbers for next time.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
If I may.
Yes.
I can tell you that because of the bus driver shortage we've had, that when one of the lines was not operable because there was not a driver, we got a complaint from someone who wanted it. So that gives you an indication.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like it's that there's a lack of need.
Good. I'm glad that it sounds like it's being utilized. Thank you so much. Any other questions, concerns? Seeing none.
Item 3, approval to apply for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Training and Employment Program Grant to increase employment services in Clackamas County. Anticipated value is $163,000 for 1 year. Funding is through Oregon Department of Human Services with a match funded through Metro Supportive Housing Services Measure funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, this is actually a great partnership with the state. We take individuals who are on federal food stamps, and we connect them with our jobs program, and we train them, and we connect them with employers. And so that's what this grant is for, to make sure that we continue to take their clients, connect them with jobs. We work with them and make those connections.
I'm intrigued by this. So, because I've asked the question before, can Metro Supportive Houses Services monies be used for nutrition, food? And it looks like the answer is yes.
It's not buying the food. The state's going to give them that part. They'll give them the assistance for that. That's the SNAP part of it. What we're providing is the workforce part. So we're doing the workforce training, or we're connecting them to employers who would work with them. So that's the homelessness connection, or SHS connection.
Thank you, Rod. That's really clear. Not to confuse things, but Gary, can we look at that a little bit deeper for the NCPRD? I asked that question. I understand that distinction. Thank you, Rod. But if we could apply that for funding to help fill the gap for the community center?
Yes, Milwaukee Community Center, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none.
Okay, great. Item 4, approval of a Revenue County Services Agreement with Health Share of Oregon for reimbursement of community-based public health services to Medicaid members. Agreement value is $799,216 for 1 year. Funding through Health Share of Oregon. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this revenue agreement will provide financial assistance for the following services. The funds support the Blueprint for Healthy Clackamas County, which is a small grants program to communities for nutritional type activities, to increase access to maternal and child health services, including home visiting, women and infants and children's programming, and childhood immunizations. And thirdly, a connection to care for communicable disease prevention and case management services.
Questions or concerns, anyone? Seeing none.
Item 5, approval of an amendment extending the duration of an intergovernmental grant agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for behavioral health workforce incentive funds. Amendment extends the agreement by 12 months. Total agreement value is now $381,250 for 26 months. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, this program is basically where the state's trying to help with the mental health therapist shortage. And so the Workforce Incentive Program aims to support the recruitment and retention of behavioral health providers with degrees by working towards licensure, providing culturally sensitive training and other things to rural and underserved communities.
Question. Are these like a scholarship program to get this, or is it a cross-train, like what is, do we?
It's
help me
funds
understand.
that come into behavioral health, and so they have a pot of money to provide training to the people that they've hired. And so if they're still working towards licensure, it could help them with that process, because that's like 2,000 plus hours of supervision, those type of things. So,
Okay. Is it cross-disciplinary training too? So if a nurse comes in and says, I want to work more in this mental health space, but I need this additional licensure, or if somebody that has another professional degree, are we looking to, does this help expand a little bit beyond the traditional maybe applicants or cohort that would be generally approached?
I'd have to look into that, because this is coming to behavioral health. So my initial response is probably just their therapist, but your idea of where you have nurses who are also delving into mental health and behavioral health, it's like a great idea. So that's certainly something I can take back to Mary and get some more intel on.
I'm just curious about how
Yeah,
big that net is.
yeah. Okay, we can get that information for you.
Yeah, no, any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you.
Item 6, approval to apply for a grant from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for treatment court programs. Anticipated grant award is $2 million for 5 years. Funding is through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. No county general funds are involved.
If we receive this grant, it would expand the Health Centers Division's substance use disorder treatment and recovery services in the existing county treatment court programs, aiming to improve abstinence, housing stability, and social connectedness, and reduce criminal justice involvement. The success rate of the current treatment court programs in 2023 is approximately at 80%. So we're really proud of that, and then we work with the DA on this one. So this is a really good program that we'd like to see expanded.
Any other questions? Commissioner Scholl?
Morning, Mr. Cook. The recent change to Measure 110, how's that going to impact this application? Or how are you going to use this money?
So this is theoretical, but with the DA getting extra staff to work with people who are being brought in by law enforcement to the system, they will triage them to these treatment courts. And we have a mental health court, we have a treatment court, so depending on how they triage them. And so this will actually give us more capacity to serve more people as the volume increases, because everybody anticipates increased volume of people. This will help us on the back end to actually do the treatment.
All right, good, thank you.
Mr. Cook, is this mostly an outpatient type services that are happening, or are we talking, or is there anywhere in that care
particular
continuum
service-
we talk about?
This particular service would be because you're still at the court phase, so you have a judge
Okay,
with the velvet hammer saying, do this or you'll see me again, kind of thing.
okay.
And so this is the beginning of that. And so with our recovery center that we're working on, I think that's where these people would probably be triaged, those who need that long-term assistance.
Is this anticipated funding because of the new legislative effort to deal with the drug crisis, or is this funding that we were looking for that existed even prior to that legislation? And we could tie into additional funding coming?
I have to get information on that, but my speculation would be that this already was created by the federal government before Oregon went into its movement. So, but we always look for opportunity to intersect and connect.
There you go. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none?
Item 7, approval to apply for a grant from the Oregon Health Authority for a Healthy Homes Grant Program. Anticipated award is $250,000 for 3 years. Funding through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, the Healthy Homes Grant Program aims to enhance housing conditions and health outcomes for low-income households by preserving affordable housing, addressing deferred maintenance issues, and providing home repair funds. This program will partner with the Public Health Division to establish a referral system, expanding eligible repairs to include home toxin abatement and energy-efficient upgrades.
How does this play out in reality? So do we have a homeowner that's lower income, or a renter maybe? I don't know how that landlord plays in and says, hey, I got drafty windows. I need some weathering stuff done, or I
Yeah, so-
have
so we have-
asbestos in my wherever. Like, how does it work? Like, how does this play out?
Yeah, so basically you have the team that does the typical weatherization issues, and so that would be windows and all those type of things. They'll be doing the work. Public health is going to be the one assessing an individual coming in or their home and saying, hey, we see mold, we see other things that are toxins, because a lot of people who even live by fields where there's been a lot of spray, they get asthma and those type of things. So that they'll be looking for that, triaging for that, and then sending, and so the actual fix then goes to the other part of the division, where they come in and actually put in new windows, put in new doors, put in new roofs, those type of things.
It's not a lot of money over 3 years.
No,
So does that just go like?
So we have the money for the actual fix. This is going to be money for the triage of those individuals who are identified.
Professional triage.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, that is the consent list. All of these items will be on this Thursday's business meeting agenda for your final action, Commissioners. You can stay, Rod. Next on the list, Metro Supportive Housing Services Executive Committee Representatives. There's a memo in your packet. We are seeking your direction and potential motion today, Commissioners. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Adam Brown, Deputy Director. One of you go ahead, please.
Yes, and I'll hand it over to Adam Brown, who's very familiar with this particular topic.
Good morning, Commissioners. Adam Brown, Deputy Director, Health, Housing, and Human Services. Commissioner West, welcome back. It's nice to see you.
Thank you, nice to see you too.
So we're seeking your approval of appointments to the Supportive Housing Services Executive Committee. And as you probably know, the SHS IGA between Clackamas County and Metro and Tri-Counties and Metro individually establishes various groups to oversee the administration of supportive housing services funding. And this includes the financial review team, which is the CFOs from the Tri-Counties and Metro, and includes the executive committee, which you're familiar with the composition, members of the community and representatives from each jurisdiction, the regional oversight committee, similar composition, and the Tri-County planning, the regional oversight committee and Tri-County planning body. So the executive committee in the IGA is contemplated as a staff level body whose membership includes representation from each county and metro, comprised of at least one individual with each program expertise, policy expertise, legal expertise, and financial expertise. And this group has been meeting informally for 2 years now. And the primary purpose is to address ongoing and specific program implementation and improvement needs. And so what we're asking from you today is to formally appoint recommended members of Clackamas County to the executive committee. I can offer more context on why we want to take that step if you have questions about it. But the representatives, and these are folks that have been acting in this capacity for a couple of years now, are Vahid Brown as our policy lead, as our program lead, Emily Klepper as our policy lead, Andrew Naylor as our council lead, and me acting as the finance lead for the county. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. First of all, you guys are, from what I know and what I've seen, you guys are doing great work. So I, just up front here, I approve, I'm ready to vote and support you all being the team here. So great job on your work thus far and everything else. Is our 4 representatives, there's going to be 4 from Multnomah County and 4 for Washington, so it's not population based? Are we outnumbered to the table? I mean,
Nope, it's 4 in those same categories from each jurisdiction.
Okay. My second question is, I was assuming, again, you guys are more on the technical side, so I'm not here to prescribe what ought to be changed, but is there any opportunity or thoughts or discussion about altering the implementation plan that was first approved to make it more robust?
So that's a good question. I mean, the local implementation plan was originally our strategy out of the gate, right? It was, okay, we had a lot of low-hanging fruit in Clackamas County for strategic investments to make with these new homeless services dollars. So we laid out an initial plan, and our efforts to this point have been making investments to achieve the goals laid out in that plan and achieve our SHS goals more broadly. We're kind of at a pivot point here where we've largely built the system. We're seeing success from that system, but now we need to tune the dials and we need to optimize it. And we really need to take a look at the efficacy of the last dollar and what we're going to do with the next dollar and where we need to adjust how resources are allocated within that system. And so that would then open the door for an adjustment to the local implementation plan to say, here's what we set out to do, here's how we've done, and to the extent that what we want to do doesn't fit within the four corners of that original plan, we do need to make amendments, and we're required to do so under the IGA.
Do you, last question on this, do you feel as though we have a strong enough voice, the counties collectively, realizing that Metro is really in charge of this committee?
Well, that's one of the reasons for formalization, is because at the staff level, there has been a lot of informal channeling of certain things. Like a really good example of one right now is partner monitoring, right? So that's a very standard process where a funder comes in and reviews your fiscal and program compliance. Well, the IGA contemplates monitoring and it lays out a process for that. And it says that Metro and the counties will first get together and work on a plan for monitoring, right? Lay out the process. Metro communicated to the counties a couple of weeks ago that it had a monitoring plan and was going to commence monitoring in May or June. And we said, oh, and then they said the plan. Here's the plan, open to feedback from the counties. And the Tri-Counties have discussed this and thought, well, this is exactly the kind of thing that really should be formalized in the executive committee. Probably in October, November, we all should have sat down and talked about the need for monitoring. All right, let's work on a plan together. And so I think part of the formalization of the executive committee, really the impetus there is to ensure that we have good meeting regularity, good meeting hygiene. Metro has responsibility under the IGA to convene this meeting, set the agenda, formalize decisions that come out of this program level group. And so that's really one of the reasons why we want to formalize the membership here and move things more in that direction. And that, I think that gets at your question, do we have that adequate standing? This will help ensure that.
Yeah, and I hope that our performance, with these monies, I think as the world's watching, locally, how well, what some counties are doing and maybe not how well, other county or so are doing. So, but it just seems to me that as implementers and people that are actually doing the work, my concern has been that, this is not a criticism of Metro, but there ought to be some recognition that where the performance is, and I'm sure your input and your skills collectively, this team here has some standing and ought to be recognized as those dollars are, and policies and all those things that are being done have the respect and standing that they ought to have, and not let the bureaucracy grow bigger than it ought to be, not our bureaucracy, but the bureaucracy, so that most of these dollars go towards the services and not towards building staff. And hopefully that monitoring looks into even at the efficiency of administration of the organization as well. Not ours, theirs, but maybe all of ours. And I would suspect that value for the dollar here, or any kind of metrics that are drawn out of this, if there are metrics that are assigned, if they're monitoring, there's got to be metrics that I would love to look at that and see how robust that is, and making sure that not only they're looking outward, or we're all looking outward, we're also looking inward.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Any action needed for this?
Seeking a motion to approve the 5 members to the executive committee.
I move to approve the Clackamas County representatives to the Metro Supportive Housing Services Executive Committee, Program, Vahid Brown, Policy, Emily Klepper, Legal, Andrew Naylor, Finance, Adam Brown.
Second.
Any further discussion? I will jump in and say I am glad that we're at the table here. I have full confidence in all of you to represent the values and the priorities of Clackamas County, and to share why we've been so successful, in all honesty, compared to the rest of the state, when others have not had that same success in their efforts. But we want the whole state to be successful. We're all into this together. We share borders with many of these other counties and jurisdictions, and we care about them also. And I think that you guys will be a good representative to what's working and what's not working, and how to move forward. I am a little bit concerned by your story, to be honest. I interpret it as more of a dictate than a collaboration for Metro, in maybe kind of a passive aggressive way. Maybe my perception's wrong. You are more than happy to bring some flavor to that and some context, but I want to make sure that that's an important piece for those of you that really are implementing in boots on the ground for these services, and to be a part of that conversation about how accountability, transparency happens with service providers. To be frank, I trust you and others in your positions more than I would trust kind of Metro in this instance. So I want us to be able to be collaborative, but also want to protect and preserve local control and some autonomy in our ability to still be effective where we have been effective, and continue to do the good work that we've been doing. I don't know if you have any additional comments, Adam, but I'd love to hear them.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate that, Commissioner West, and I think it's really a matter of interjurisdictional respect.
Yeah.
We feel like we have meaningful contributions to make to something like monitoring. And sometimes when we try to voice those meaningful concerns, our intent is to ensure successful outcomes, and that the process achieves our intended shared goal. But sometimes when we raise that voice, it's construed as, oh, well, maybe you don't want to be monitored, or you're resisting this for one reason or another. And that isn't the spirit at all. And that goes from, whether it's monitoring or how we plan to communicate with the community about our outcomes or things like that. It's really a matter of we feel like we have meaningful contributions to make to help tell our story and achieve the outcomes. And if we don't advocate for ourselves and ensure that interjurisdictional respect, that doesn't necessarily happen.
And I think there's going to be such a change, and not all of it great. There's going to be some flexing and growing with the new legislation that we have regarding Measure 110 and how those things are implemented and how that impacts local level. Some of our questions are still not answered. I think this is just maybe has to be the first of other legislative fixes that we've all talked about, and the role that we all play in this. And so that collaboration, that not being dictated to, is essential for a successful org, especially with these lives that we're trying, and these communities are trying to get restored and back on their feet again in very challenging times. We maybe made it less painful than it was, hopefully, but man, we still have a lot of work to do, and we cannot let off the gas. And so I trust you guys in this. Thank you for your presentation. I also will be voting in support of this, and I would like to call the vote.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Schull.
Aye.
Vice Chair West.
Aye.
Go forward and conquer.
The motion passes 3-0. Do I get it? I don't even know I'm supposed to use this.
Thanks so much.
Should start and stop the meeting.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Next, Advisory Board and Commission appointments. Tony, go ahead, please.
Clackamas Workforce Partnership has an opening on their board due to a resignation. The position is for a representative of an organization that has demonstrated experience and expertise in addressing employment, training, and education needs of eligible youth, including representatives or organizations that serve out-of-school youth under Title I of the Workforce and Innovation and Opportunity Act. Recommended for appointment is Lisa Stroud to a first term.
Do I have a motion?
I move to appoint Lisa Strout to her first term.
Seconded.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Tony, please call the vote.
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Vice Chair West.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
Next, review of your board business meeting agenda for this Thursday, April 4, 2024 at 10 a.m. You'll have a public hearing for the street service, for Service District Number 5, Street Lighting District. There are 21 assessment areas that want to join the lighting district, and it's all funded by those ratepayers. That's your first public hearing on that topic. Next, you'll have a presentation to proclaim April as Grange Month in Clackamas County, and you'll have all the consent agenda items you discussed today. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know, and staff and I are happy to answer it for you prior to Thursday. Final item today, Vice Chair, is Commissioner Communications.
Thank you, Gary. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, last week, the board as a body was on recess, and I took that opportunity to catch up on a lot of communications between members of their community, elected officials, and so forth, covering a whole variety of topics. I'm not quite done. The week wasn't long enough. I still have about 3 or 4 more people to connect with, some of that in person. One of the things I did do, I believe it was Wednesday morning, was speak to the TriMet board. They had they are doing a road show, so to speak, where they're having some of their monthly meetings remote. So that was held at the Clackamas Community College Harmony campus. And so they had a little bit of a meet and greet, kind of an opportunity early in the morning. And then they started their business meeting. I spoke, and a couple other elected officials spoke along with the public at large, like they typically have. But I did raise the issue of the needs for transit, and most especially the key thing I think that we're discussing, talking about at the C4 level, which will be Thursday night, hope to see you there, Commissioner West, is the HB 2017 STIF funds, and the legislative intent of that was employees would, out of their payroll, are now paying a transit tax, and the intent of that tax that they're paying is that they would have a provision of service within a mile of their home at some point to grow that last mile connection. And that's not really working out as planned. It is in other parts of the state, it's working out pretty well. They're actually implementing that, but here in the metro region, it's not really, we haven't really seen our fair share of those dollars being put on the ground in Clackamas County, whether that's within TriMet Service District or outside their service district. But TriMet is what's called the qualified entity for the region, so they can help determine and disperse funds for areas outside of their district, as well as enhance service within their district in Clackamas County. So that's pretty much my message in 3 minutes or less in typically public testimony, but I try to convey that. And I'm hoping that as we discuss this more at the C4 level and even last night at the R1 Act level, opportunities for increasing transit and looking at that as having the 2025 legislative session, because there's going to be a transportation bill, to look at that and maybe tweaking it so that there are more revenues available for those who are paying. So it's not a good, I think we have a responsibility when people are paying for a service out of their check, they should receive the service, or there ought to be a pathway towards enhancing that and meeting that goal. And so that was my message, and that would be my message for the rest of this year.
Well, isn't that a novel idea? People should get what they pay for.
That's essentially what it is. And I think people are willing to pay as long as they get something in return, and whether that's road repair or whether that's whatever it may be, I think that we have a responsibility as elected leaders to make sure that that intention is met, and we serve, and we go through a lot of public funds, and like we did here today with the budgeting questions, with the consent agenda. Our job is to help be the watchdogs and make sure that we're doing as good a job as we can, and sometimes that requires a little bit more pain, and I appreciate your consideration of what I was trying to attempt in the NCPRD discussion, but we got to change that paradigm a little bit in order to enable the change in a positive way so we can get that budget in a better financial position than it is today. So thank you for your patience with me on this. And Commissioner West, you were gone at the Board of Directors meeting, but I want to also include you in my showing and expressing my appreciation to the NCPRB Board of Directors and helping initiate those changes. They're kind of painful, but I think they're well intended and I think they're well received. I think what the members of the DAB or the DAC that I had talked to when they saw the forecast, and my kudos to Cindy Becker for putting that together. She's really good with budget and spreadsheets, but they saw something they hadn't seen for a long time, which shed a lot of light on what we need to do and do so in a positive way. So I'm excited that we're making those changes. And again, I want to give you that shout out as well, so I appreciate your support for that.
Yeah, and thank you for your comments, Commissioner Scholl. Savas. Commissioner Scholl.
Thank you. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court denied the petition for writ of certiorari on ONC lands that has to do with the Obama-era expansion of the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument and taking some 40,000 acres out of production of ONC-managed, BLM-managed lands on ONC oversight lands. So, what I have here is a letter I want to draft up for the board's consideration for next Tuesday, and that's the Association of ONC Counties recommend that counties send this letter to the Bureau of Land Management, encourage them to have our AOC Council represent us in the review of the resource management plan that BLM's working on. We need to stick up for ourselves and protect those lands in Oregon managed by the BLM. So you'll see that on Tuesday. Also, this month we are scheduled to receive our final Secure Rural Schools Act payment. It should be around $1.4 million. Now, that money over the years has gone to pay for Title I roads and schools, Title II projects for federal lands, and Title III county projects. So that's not all very happy news there, but one of the questions we need to look at as a board in coming years, since this will be our last Secure Rural Schools Act payment, what do we do to help our communities that will no longer be receiving that money? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Those are important issues. I am really happy to be back. I've been gone for far too long, serving as an officer in the United States Navy. And though I'm very proud of that work, I'm really, really, really happy to be back. Nothing like being thrown into the fire into my first public meeting as running a public meeting, but here we go. Thank you guys all for your patience as I navigated us through this public meeting. And I just want to assure Clackamas County that even though I was gone and doing work for the Navy, I made sure to stay on the pulse on the big issues that was still affecting the county. I remember when others would be asleep in the dorm rooms, I would be reading or calling Gary and trying to work through the time zone differences and in between tasks that the military had me doing to make sure that I was clear on issues that we were facing. And with some of you, I had conversations along the way too and reached out to you. So though I was gone for longer than I would like, we continue to do the work no matter where we're at. And try to represent the county well. And I think, Commissioner Savas, you bring up really important issues regarding the financial solvency and the fiscal responsibility that we have with the Parks District, and making sure that we are financially stable, strong, transparent, and adhering to those values that are important, not just to our constituents, but to this board and to the county. I think we have the right leadership to get that done, and I'm really glad that we were able to hopefully catch a big issue and then get ahead of it. The weather's more beautiful. Things are starting to turn green. I'm excited to be back and really honored to be able to serve in this position. And with that, we look forward to the future public business coming forward this week and next week and the rest of the month. And I hope everybody had a fantastic spring break. And with that, if I don't see any further business, Gary, this meeting is adjourned.